So this is just a scan of a brush mark. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That I just found online. Probably be better if I had a better one, but I'm not going to worry about it. And I think I'm going to make this a little smaller just so it doesn't get crazy memory hoggish. I'm going to go here. To my window, or actually I'm going to go here to my brushes, or I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Going to window, I'm going to image trace, because right now this thing's a raster object. So I would dial this in, and remember, we have to do this. We have to drop this advanced thing and put ignore white. I'm going to leave it on black and white. That's what I need. And I'm just going to say this threshold is all right. I would dial it in and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just going to say this is fine. And then I'm just going to go to object. You can go here to trace, but I'm going to go to, oh, I got to put preview. And again, let's take it down a little bit. It's just, I'm going to say that's fine. I got ignore white, preview, object. I'm just going to expand it. Object fill, that's fine. So now we have a raster or a vector object. Then I'm just going to go over here to this, which is my brushes palette. And I'm just going to drag it over here. And I don't want a scatter brush. I want an art brush. We'll talk about those other ones later. And I'm going to get this, okay? What I'm going to do is change this to pressure. I want to put scale proportionally. And under color, I'm just going to put, let's try tints and shades. I always forget that. And let's say, okay. I shouldn't need this anymore. And I'm going to grab that brush. I'm going to grab my, whatever you call it, my stylus. And you can see now, when I lean on it harder, and I'm going to go a little smaller with it.
Professor, what were the properties of the brush? I was writing. What were the properties of the brush?
So let's double click it. So if I double click it, because you want to play in here, I got scale proportionally and pressure right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you first told it you wanted to make a brush, and it gives you
I just drag it into the brush palette.
Okay, great.
Now, when I change something, it'll go, do you want to apply this to all the strokes or just leave the strokes? I'm going to say apply to all of them. So you can see the difference here. Here, I'm barely applying pressure. And then here, I'm applying it towards the end. And I'm getting these different thin, thick weights going on. Does that make sense?
Are you using your board or the mouse?
No, I'm using a stylus.
Oh, thanks.
And this is only possible through the stylus, right?
Yeah, you can't do it with a mouse. But if you look, it's nice. You can start to build some nice drawing brushes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And, and you can take whatever you want. You can take your own ink brush marks and things like that and play around with them. And if I hated them, in theory, I should be able to go and apply a different brush mark to it. Yeah. Or I can apply my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Pretty simple, right? So but what you got to remember is you gotta vectorize whatever it is you're going to start with. Does that make sense? And then you want to have them sort of pressure sensitive. And I always forget, hang on. Let's see if I can remember this.
Okay, I'm sorry. But then it saves it as a vector, right? It looks like a raster when I'm looking at it because it's
No,
got,
it's vector. It's vector.
but it is a vector. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's a vector stroke. That's why I can go in here now and I can change the stroke. So if I go back to my brush, I'm going to really, I like them smaller because I can make it bigger. Oops.
It began as a raster image, was image traced into a vector
Yeah.
object. Then the vector object was made into a brush.
And you can see these are the same, these are on the same settings, but they get bigger as I lean on it. And I always forget this one right here, but this has a lot of sway over it. And I always forget exactly what it does, but it has a lot of, you want to play with that. And I got to remember what it is. I think it's just a thin, thick thing. I can't remember now, but you do want to play with that. Now,
I think your left side number is the minimal size of the brush and the right side number is the maximum.
yeah, something
size.
like that, but it has a big effect on it. I just go in and play with them and then I figure it out. This one's not bad. So you can go in there and, you know, make any kind of brush you want. So if I were you, I'd play around with a lot of different things. Does that make sense? Pretty simple. I mean, you take that raster or vector, once you vector it, drag it into your brush palette, and then it'll give you your choices there. Does that make sense? You want pressure for sure. And I do the scale, I think it's scale proportionally. And then I play around with those two sliders and then I tell it, I always forget what color I put it on. This time I had it on, let's try this. This time I think I have it on, let's see. I have it on tints and shades. So let's see if we change it. Okay, so that one's not changing. So let's go back.
You know, Mike, in like character design, they always have you in Photoshop, but it seems like you'd have a lot more control this way.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. Yeah. Okay. So that one changes the color, which is the bottom one. You like your blob tool sort of acts like a paintbrush, if I remember right. I don't use it that much. So instead of seeing this all, as far as I remember anyway.
Doesn't that tool create fill instead of strip?
Yeah. But it's sort of a free form tool. Yeah. So see, instead of seeing it all as line, it just sees it like a paint stroke. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because if I do it with a regular, whatever you call it, paintbrush, it's going to do this. And then when I look at that, it's seeing all that as a line. That's going to create a bunch of problems.
Yeah, I like that blob tool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could see with the blob tool, you could switch the fill and the stroke, and that might be very clear.
Yeah, in theory, I don't. Well, let's see.
Now, yeah.
Oops.
So you can see the difference there.
Well, let's go.
Now I get it. Okay. Thanks.
I don't think it'll behave any differently on either one.
So it's kind of like you're building a really organic looking shape.
Yeah, it's just giving you more of a paintbrush for shape.
Right.
You know, when I'm thinking usually, you know, I don't know when they put that blob tool in there, but I know that I kind of played around with that idea of filling it, sort of using the paintbrush like a, and I'm going to go to this little fly out because we have this fly out on all our palettes. And I'm going to go open brush library. And I don't want to open any of those. I want to open my own, go to other library. Okay. And I've got different ones in here. So let's do gouache shader. So I'm going to say, yeah, open that. Here's one palette. Let's go back over to here again. Hit the fly out, the hamburger stack, go Open brush library, other library. I'm going to do grave etcher. There's the grave etcher. And these are really interesting. So these are all etching brushes. I love these. By the way, never look at these things like, oh, they're just for etching. No, they're not. I use them for all kinds of stuff. I use them for texture, but they're really cool for etching too. So if you look here, so I'm not going to worry about putting the other guy in there because it probably hogs some memory.
On the positive side, at least we get to see it a couple times.
Yeah, good. Bright side. Okay, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now I probably don't have these loaded, so I got to go back and do that. I'm just going to load the gouache. Now these, again, these aren't normally memory hoggy. It's my machine. So let's try. I'm going to try this one. Let's go a little smaller. And you can see, I can start to get like a painterly edge, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, sirree.
And let's go try this now. Now, if I had a, I'm doing this with real simple shapes. I don't bog down the memory anymore. Let's get rid of that. And let's go. Oops. I'm just going to try, let's do this. And let's try this one. And then just to get it quick, let's go here. That's weird. It's on multiply, but it's not doing its thing. Hang on. I'm just going to darken it. So if I wanted to get sort of a, let's try a different one. You know, sort of a textured, shaded thing, which is what these are really for. So let's try this one. Could do that. I could do a less intense one. And then I could, let's lock this. I'm going to go put this on the front. Make a clipping mask. Then I can contain it and I could use it for different shading and different texture effects. Does that make sense? You can make your own. You can make your own vector object. Let's get rid of this. I want to paste this in here. I'm going to go a little smaller with it. I don't think I need it that big. Then I'm going to come over here to symbol. I'm going to drag it over. Oops. I'm going to drag it over here. And I don't want a movie clip. I want a graphic. I'm going to leave it as dynamic symbol, and that's fine. Now I can get rid of this. And now, let's get rid of this. If I come over here, right here to this spray can, and I grab the edge right here, it'll just pop out. And if I grab the spray can, it's going to just spray these things all over the place.
You can adjust your parameters on shade, on size, on rotation.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then I'm going to go here and go, so I can sort of move them around as sort of groups depending on how big my brush is. I'm going to pull them out this way a little bit. I can come this way, and that sort of gathers them. Or I can hold my option and it'll push them away from each other. I can go here. This will make them bigger. If I hold option and hold on it, it'll be smaller.
I'm wondering if this is a better option than a scatter brush. This weekend I was trying to make a scatter brush, and
it just depends on what you're doing. If I'm doing a scatter brush, it's probably going to be a little bit random, probably. By the way, so what I'm doing right now is I can spin these, and I'm spinning them sort of. If I make this smaller, like if I make this brush smaller, I can go in here more on individuals and start to spin them a little bit. Then I'm going to go, and then this one here, I think it's a stainer brush. Let's just check. So let's get a color here. Let's get this orangey color. It's got to be a fill, apparently. Oops. So you can see it'll stain them.
yeah.
So you could get some nice little variations in there. Now this one here will knock them back. So let's go bigger. So if I had a lot in the back, I might use this. Or if I had mountains in the background, I want to send them back a little bit. Or I could just use them like this to vary. This last one, don't worry about it. That's a style thing. Does that make sense? I'm going to go Command R. I'm going to pull my, what you call it here,
Horizontal.
my guide. You know, if this was, I'm going to make it a little more interesting. Hang on. Or stupid looking, one or the other.
Oh, it looks like desert hills in the desert.
Good, that's what I want.
Western,
Yeah, that's good.
Western desert.
So let's go. I'm going to make this a little more neutral.
So you're Belinda.
Yes. Very specific. I'm just going to go in and grab this one. Standard brush. Open brush library, artistic, charcoal pencil. Now I'm going to go push up the warmth. Oops. What just happened? Oh, there it is. And I can start here. Just sort of get a texture on this thing if the light was hitting it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very rudimentary. I get it. But okay. And then I could go, let's do, hopefully this thing will let us do this. So I'm just going to keep this really rudimentary. Let's go. I want to group these. I think I already did. Now, again, I could put a, you know, I would put a clipping mask around that so I don't get this stuff going on, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. And I'm going to go, well, let's do this. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to go to this cyan.
You're looking across the Salton Sea at the Chocolate Mountains.
I love the Salton Sea.
Would you ever consider retiring in Bombay Beach?
No,
No, me either.
no. I don't need that. It's fun to go down there and fart around. I'm going to start going kayaking down there. I'm going to buy a kayak. And I like hanging out down there and all that. But like the problem is that, okay, so now I got this. So I'm going to make a square here. Let's hopefully this won't give me trouble. And I'm going to go to my gradient. I'm going to pull my gradient. I'm going to pull this down a little bit. And let's see if we get them. Oh, we did. Sometimes it doesn't give the attenuator. So I'm going to do that for now. And then I'm going to take both of the, so I have these locks. So all I'm going to grab is the reflection of the mountain and this this whatever you call it, gradient. Now I'm going to go here back to my transparency thing. And right here, there's a thing called mask, make mask. And it makes a mask that I can now go in and I can adjust this. I can get a little reflection in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because your borderline between your black and white is cutting out the image, so
It's just like a clipping mask, or it's like a layer mask in Photoshop.
the gradient, yeah.
Now, the nice thing about this, if you have or whatever you call it, a thing underneath, if I take this, oh shit, hang on, I got to do this. So I have to go. I always forget this. How do I do that? Okay. Let's see if it'll go. That's not what I want. Hang on. Okay, so I got to click on this. So this is the mask, and this is the actual image. I think that's what I had to do. Okay. So I'm going to lock this too. I'm going to come here. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to go. There's a couple things I could do here. It's too bright, so I'm going to knock it down. I'm just going to knock down the opacity. Go back to here. You know, and if I put like a little ripple or something over that, it'll automatically look like a reflection. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Same thing here. So let's do this. Like, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but if you look across a lake or a river further away, you'll get that smear of highlight. So sometimes you can do it.
The old mirage of water in the desert. Yeah.
Well, it's on the, hang on. Oops. And again, I can knock it down. You know, and I can start to get that little sparkly stuff over the surface. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I could probably, I don't know if my computer's going to let me do this, but I could probably, let's see. It's on that. So I'm going to see if it'll let me do this. Let's get rid of that. There it is. So I want this. Now I'm going to go. Let's see if it'll let me do this. See how sometimes it doesn't give you the attenuator? I think that's so weird. Let's see if I can go. Come on. I think it's just too memory hogged up. Let's try something else. Let's try object, path, outline stroke. Now, if I wasn't having memory problems here or whatever it is, this wouldn't be a problem. But what I really want to do here, let's see if it'll give me the attenuator now. Nope. So I'm going back over to my window here. Okay, basically what I was going to do is do the same sort of color highlight, but take it on either end, put a gradient like we've done before, and then fade it out to 0. So it's sort of a shine and then it fades off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I might be able to do it by doing this. Let's go here. Doing a radial blur. Go to the blue. Go to the blue. Let's see what that looks like first. Okay. And then go, I'm going to put one in the center. So option drag. Oops, I'm going to read that. Let's see if we can go. It screwed up. It did some weird thing. It's because my computer's just bogging. But you understand what I'm doing, right? I would just fade it off, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I get it.
You know, and then I could take this. And then this one, I could switch to a cool and I could start cooling these out. Does that make sense? Might not even need the texture in this one. Because as it gets closer, I'm going to get texture. As it gets further away, I'm going to get less. It's too much. I want it neutral. Probably a little lighter.
Now it's more like Lake Powell.
Exactly. Because that's what I meant. I was going for Lake Powell.
There you go.
You know, and then I'd have to readjust this whole thing again.
Mike, do you ever teach the color class?
Color theory?
Yeah.
No. I don't even think they'll let me teach color theory. Just kind of
It's
funny.
too bad. I took it. The guy was a nice guy, but I have to say I didn't get a whole lot out of it.
Who was it?
God, what was his name?
Thing or something like that.
No.
He's the watercolor guy, right?
Well, I don't know the. I'd have to know the name.
Yeah, his name was Song. He spent a lot of time on color mixing. When I
That's
took
not bad.
Yeah, but it was within kind of like
It turned into a painting class.
Oh, okay. You know, and just create some sort of blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can see in the same thing here. Look, we could do this. It's the same thing. Look, I'll give you a perfect example of this right here, what I just did. Big solid, textury brush mark. Big solid, textury brush mark. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks friggin' cool. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Time saver too.
So they
Yeah.
just textured that. They didn't go in and actually just cut that little shape out.
They did
just
this.
go, oh, fantastic.
That's basically how that happened. And then there's a few other little brushes here and there, and that's it. And then I'm going to pop this in here. Let's make it a little smaller, I guess. Now I'm going to take this whole thing. Here's my swatches. And I'm going to drag it over here. Let's get rid of this. And now here it is. It's right there. And there, I double clicked it, okay? And that opens up this window, which also will live up under here if you want it. Let's get rid of that. And what this does is it gives me pattern options. So I can change this grid, you know, offset it in different ways. However you want to do that. Oh, actually it's here. Well, let's get this back to normal. This is just the number thing. So let's go back to whatever that is here. So I can go column based around a hexagon idea, and then back to grid if I want to do that. Size tile to art. So let's look at this. Okay, and then let's look at this. It's not showing my. So if I pull this out this way, everything's adjusting to that. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Oops, I forgot to hold shift. If I do, I think it's this one. It's one of these two. Yeah, it'll start overlapping depending on these two little things that I'm clicking. And then here, what this is once I get overlap, this will determine how it's overlapping, what's in front of what. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's go back to there, back to just normal. You got spacing, you got all that stuff. Okay. And then you got, we don't care about that. So let's go. And I'm in here. I'm going to hit done right there. And then now it's in my swatches. So now if I had that picked and I pick a shape, it's going to give me that swatch. And I can just go as big with it as I want. Really simple. Where for whatever reason I needed a pattern. Oops. Let's get rid of that. And I'll go, let's go to a blue. And then I'm going to go. Now I'm going to grab these little things here. Maybe there. And then maybe go. Let's do something funky with it. Let's see if I can still make it thinner. Nah, it won't let me. That's okay. I'll just use this. I don't like this color, but oh well.
Sort of a cobalt blue, although it had its place in the 60s.
Yeah, it still does. I don't like it for this. But anyway, you know, and I could build this little thing and then I could just take this thing and build a little pattern out of it. Or I could just confine it within a square and literally create a pattern, you know, and just kind of dick around with it. You know, and just real quickly create a pattern. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can also go in here. I see this all the time, by the way. Go here to your distort and transform. Like you can do all these weird shit with this stuff. And some of it's cool.
You know, if you tell it to establish a pattern, is it set the border right up against? Because I notice Illustrator tends to do that. If you
can adjust it. So if you notice here, this is bloat. So it'll just create these little shapes and things for me. And some of them are cool. Like if you kind of have a decent eye, it's not bad. I see this all the time. Like I'll go to Target and I'll go, there's the pucker and bloat filter. And the only people that know that are people who are designers. It doesn't matter. This one, let's try twist. Let's go to 50. It's probably gonna way too much. Oops, I don't want that much. So that'll just start to zigzag it. Effect. Distort and transform. Let's do tweak. And these are the verticals and the horizontals. Some of them, yeah, right here, we'll have a smooth and a whatever kind of thing. You can also take things like this. Let's try this. You know, like that. That's cool. Then I don't have to make it. Right? Let's go.
Hey, Mike, I don't know if I noticed this or not, but when you made that pattern with the leaves, after you apply it, can you still click on each individual leaf and transform it, or is it more of just a solid paint?
Under
now,
symbols?
No, under the swatches.
But when I make a swatch?
Yeah, so that leaf swatch
I think you
just
can
made, right?
actually.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you can then go in and mess with each leaf after you apply it. Oh, you can. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Well, it'll affect all of them though, which it should.
Oh.
Well, that's what you want it to do.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
So let's see if we go. Nice thing about that too is you could should be able to take this. Like if you're trying to make a repeat pattern, you don't want them to go over. You could probably, kind of dial them in here so they'll repeat nice.
Can you expand it?
Huh?
Can you expand? Once you expand it, you could probably manipulate one.
Well, that's a different thing. If I did a pattern, oops. Well, that's interesting. Put the pattern in the line.
Yeah. Now revolve it and let's see what happens.
That's kind of cool though. I could probably go here and go. Let's see if it'll do it. And I would guess, yeah, it's not a pattern anymore.
Double click it. It might be a group. Yeah.
It's a vector. I mean, it's just that I think it's just back to, let's see. Like I can't, well, let's see. Yeah, it doesn't read it as a pattern anymore. So we just expanded. Let's try. No, that won't work. So let's see what happens if we do this. There's the original pattern. But now it's reading it as like one thing. I don't think it's not reading as a pattern anymore. It's just reading it as shapes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you can go back and forth if you wanted to.
Yeah, if you needed to for something. And you could probably, let's see. Yeah, you can go in individually on these, I think. Yeah. But see, they got weird masks and things over them. See that?
Right.
that it creates, you know, to make that pattern or whatever. It's a byproduct.